Hi, everyone. Thank you for logging on today. We're going to take a few more minutes to allow others to join, and then we'll get things started.
Greetings. It is indeed my pleasure to welcome you to our 42nd webinar in the Coffee With series hosted by the Greenleaf Center for Servant Leadership here at Seton Hall University. I'm Reggie Lewis, the Executive Director of the Greenleaf Center, and it's great to greet all of you who've logged on today from around the country to take part in our conversation with the Dr. Dan McQuiston, an influential voice in leadership whose ideas will continue to shape generations to come. I'll give a more formal intro to our distinguished guest in a minute, but first a word about the webinar series and the Greenleaf Center. The Coffee With series provides the chance to showcase the inspirational stories of servant leaders and the endless ways in which individuals, organizations, and society in general can be transformed by the power of servant leadership, a philosophy in which the leader first seeks to serve. For over 60 years, the Greenleaf Center has worked to promote the awareness, understanding, and practice of servant leadership. In addition to the Coffee With series, the other core programs include the Greenleaf Scholars Program, which funds research on the efficacy and impact of servant leadership, a virtual course designed to provide professionals with the fundamentals of servant leadership practices that are useful within any sector. We also expose high school and college students to opportunities to develop lives of service through our Next Generation initiative and through our outside engagements. We proudly work closely with organizational partners as they work to foster optimal growth among employees and nurture vibrant teams to achieve greater impact. But before a proper introduction of our guests, I'd be remiss in not acknowledging the generous sponsor of the Greenleaf Center's 2026 Coffee With webinar series, the Terrell Fund. The Terrell Fund is a foundation that serves children and families in both New Jersey and Vermont. The fund works collaboratively across sectors to make an impact in such issue areas as early childhood education, K-12 education, arts, family support, and more. Thank you, thank you, thank you to all of our friends at the Terrell Fund. And now the moment we've all been waiting for. I am so honored to welcome today's guest and my friend, Dr. Dan McQuiston, Professor Emeritus of Marketing at Butler University's Lacey School of Business. with more than 30 years of experience teaching sales and marketing at leading universities, including Butler, Indiana University, Notre Dame, and Purdue. Dr. McQuiston has influenced hundreds, and I mean hundreds, of sales professionals around the world. In addition to his academic career, he has worked with organizations across a wide range of industries and has delivered sales and executive development programs throughout the United States and internationally. His extensive experience as an educator, consultant, and mentor has shaped his perspective on what it means to build meaningful relationships through service. And today we'll explore those ideas and his new book. And I have a copy. All right, let me get, you all must go out and get this before Labor Day. It's a treat. We're going to look at the ideas of the book and some challenges around how we can rethink sales through the lens of service, trust, and transformation. Dan, are you ready over there in Indiana?
I am. Can you hear
All
me
right.
okay?
We can hear you great. Also, to our audience, after my 20 or so minute portion of this interview, you'll also have an opportunity to engage Amazon's #1 bestseller, at least this summer. I'm going to claim the rest of the year. I'm also going to close my porch door so that you can't hear my landscape.
Huh?
All right. Dan, we're going to start with the first category of formative years and career milestones. And so
Mhm.
the first question we ask all of our guests, where did you grow up? And are there any fondest memories of your childhood that you can share without embarrassment?
Oh, yeah, embarrassment. Let me cross those out. No, thank you for having me, Reggie. I'm absolutely delighted to be here, folks, and thank you all for tuning in here. Well, Reggie, I was born and raised in Battle Creek, Michigan,
Okay.
and I had formative years. We were like the Cleavers. My dad was an executive of where else but Kellogg's. And my mom was a homemaker. Now she didn't quite do house cleaning and a dress and high heels and pearls like June Cleaver did, but she did. But the thing, Reggie, that strikes me about those years growing up was how the attitude and philosophy of servanthood was in our household.
Hmm.
Um, my father was on the Board of Education in Battle Creek for 44 years. I mean, imagine
Wow.
that, 44 years. And through a lot of his tutelage and fiscal responsibility, they became a model for school systems. And in fact, they named a building after him there in Battle Creek. And my mother used to run the Children's Junior Theater. Twice a year, she would get kids from the fifth through ninth grade, and they would put on a play, a performance. Snow White, Hans Brinker, Hansel and Gretel, those types of things. But she would write the scripts herself so that every kid in there had a line, at least had one line. And my mom's been gone a long time now, and I still, just this week, I got a note from somebody about how much my mother meant to them. So, and the third thing was around our table at Thanksgiving, there was never an empty space. There was
Hmm.
always somebody there who didn't have anywhere else to go.
Wow.
And so that's what I grew up in.
Wow, what a rich childhood. I thought you were going to lean towards the line that you had to perform for a particular play. I was waiting for that. Maybe we'll send out some of our student researchers to get some
Look at
footage
that.
of you.
Yeah, I think one time somebody got sick or didn't show up, and I had to go in and I had to be the trumpeter in Hans Brinker to start the race, to start the skate
Okay.
race. Yeah. So,
I think folk are also interested in how your both your undergrad and graduate school training influence your career path. A lot of us start off thinking that if we study this, we'll end up here. So just curious as to how your studies factored into a
sure.
rich professional journey.
Okay, well, I'll have to say that it actually started when I was in high school. I was on the swim team, and we had a program called Learn to Swim, and it was teaching little kids how to swim. And we would run it on Saturdays during the school year and then during the summer, 4 or 5 days, 4 days a week during the summer. And I just took to it, and I was pretty good at it. And there was just something special about seeing a little 8-year-old kid who, when they started the summer, wouldn't put their face in the water, and then you'd be walking by them, and they'd yell, "Hey, look!" and they'd swim across the pool.
Wow.
And you think, "Oh, that's kind of neat." So it started. I guess that's where the seed was planted, if you will. And then during my graduate work, I got to be a graduate assistant, and I taught a couple classes, and I thought, well, I kind of like this. And so it turned out when I finished my MBA that I was at Bowling Green in Ohio, and they had a need for some teachers. And one of them was to teach the sales class. And of
Okay.
course, I'm a sales guy. And I talked to the department chair, and he said, well, you got to understand, this class has been known as a joke. It's been known as a joke class. And I was talking to a couple of students, and I said, you're going to do that. That's everybody. Nobody, everybody takes that because they know it's easy. Well, I thought, okay, well, this isn't going to be a joke if I'm going to do it. So I had 3 sections, and there was about 50 seats in the class. And we were on quarters, fall, spring, and fall, winter, and spring. So fall quarter, I had 32 kids in the class. Winter quarter, the class was full. And spring quarter, there was a line for people to get in, and they were coming to me asking if I could admit them.
Wow, a line.
So I thought, yeah, I think we can make this work. And it's a wonderful environment. It was stimulating. I enjoyed doing it. I enjoyed working with the students and again, helping them and maybe having an impact on their lives. And so about 40 years later, I've retired.
Look at that. So you say, let's shift to the category of actually meeting the needs of customers. And
Hmm.
despite a lot of talk out there about focusing on the customer, many organizations, obviously, as you know, still struggle to create effective incentives for employees
Sure.
to improve the way people are treated. What are some of the barriers and or reasons why this remains a challenge for many companies and organizations to do?
Well, first off, Reggie, you have to meet customers where they are.
Mm,
And I've done a lot of seminars and done a lot of consulting. And the two most dangerous words of marketing strategies, I'll throw it out there, guy. Throw out there, guys. What are the two most dangerous words in marketing strategy?
I, you got me.
That's I'm asking them. So, but I can't hear them. So anyway, the two most dangerous words are we think,
Mm,
because ladies and gentlemen, it does not matter what we think. It only matters what the customer thinks. And there are far too many organizations. Well, anytime I would walk into a company that says, well, we think our customers want this, I knew they were in trouble. I knew they were in trouble because you have to understand, what does success look like for your customer?
mm.
Where do they want to be? Where do they want to go? And it's different. And you asked about the various industries. It really doesn't matter the industry.
Interesting.
It's what does success look like? So, for example, if I'm selling office supplies to Staples, you know, the biggest thing for Staples right now is they want to make sure that their supplies are going to be at their store when the back to school rush hits.
That's right.
That's what's important to me. And on the same token, if I'm working for Medtronic and I'm selling an MRI machine, what they envision is entirely different. So you have to understand, what does success look like, and work with them. And we'll talk with that as we go along. You work with them to get there. You work with them to achieve that success. And now, I think so. Are we? The other thing you talk, so how do organizations have so much trouble doing this? Because unfortunately, they they're measuring the wrong thing. They create incentives that looks at outputs rather than outcomes.
Mm.
And you have to. I'll go back to a Harvard Business Review article a number of years ago, which it was a large consulting firm, which name escapes me at the moment, but they put together a pyramid of values which looked like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Probably most of you are familiar with that. And they thought most companies focus on the lower level, increasing profits and so forth. But it's actually the third level, which was ease of doing business.
Oh,
And the one thing, folk, in this day and age, folks, and a Gartner research said 70% of customers said, I can't do, get, I need help to get through the buying process.
oh.
So you need to help your customers get through the, understand that process, understand where they want to go. It's not what we think, it's what they think. Where do they want to go? How can I help them get there?
And measuring the right thing, and obviously not just outputs, which is
Yeah,
very insightful.
it
Um,
is. It's yeah, exactly.
and in your new book, you make the distinction between selling
Hmm.
and serving.
Hmm.
What does it actually mean for a salesperson to adopt a serving mindset? And that's the key, a serving mindset. And how does that differ from simply providing mere customer service?
Sure. Well, you can't one day wake up and say, I'm going to start serving my customers today. It doesn't work that way. Acting differently implies thinking differently. Okay. And you have to think differently. Okay. So you have to, and I'll get the scripture on you for a moment. Romans 12:2 says, you need to be transformed by the renewing of your mind.
Mhm.
And so basically, if I'm going to serve, I have to renew my mind around serving my customer.
Mhm.
Okay. And so what I do when, in fact, I'm going to do a talk here this afternoon. What I do with this, with the company, I say, okay, think about, I want you to make and we get a group, think of somebody who really served you. What did they do really serve you? And then just have two or three adjectives that would describe them. And we put them all up on the board. And I say, okay, now, how do you, and my first pillar is set serving as your true north. And I talk about having an internal compass, always points to serving your true north. A compass doesn't change. It never wavers.
Mhm.
And so if you're going to serve, it never wavers. Okay, so a lot of people think, so how do I do that? Where do I begin? And the answer, it's very simple, but it's very complicated. You begin with a choice. Like any important decision you make, you begin with a choice. And again, another thing I ask, again, I don't mean to get overly scriptural here, but I go back to Matthew 7:12. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Treat other people the way you would want to be treated. And I just go back to that list and I said, look, you've got a list of things right here. This is what salespeople did to you that you like. What can you do to them? What can you do for them to serve them that they would like? Move around to their side of the table. Just treat other people the way you want to be treated. And that's easy, but that's difficult at the same time.
Yeah, easy but often difficult, and to do it consistently. Let's delve a little more into this wonderful book. You've already mentioned the pillars. We're going to get into the pillars for
Mhm.
our audience, but
Mhm.
uh, uh, I want folks to know what motivated you to write the text, and without giving away anything, because we want people to go out and buy it and read it.
Sure. Mhm.
Without giving away any spoilers, say a bit about your main character, a guy named Paul, and his journey as a salesperson.
Sure. Well, we had, as some of your audience may know, the Greenleaf Center at one time was from Butler University in Indianapolis, and the Greenleaf Center at one time was headquartered in Indianapolis. And so we had a symposium there at Butler, sponsored by the Greenleaf Center, and I was talking to my dean one day about, this servant leadership, and I started reading a little bit about it. He looked at me and said, "You should write a book on the serving salesperson." And I thought, "What?" So that the seed was planted, and then I was giving a seminar, much like we're doing here in person, and I was asking the audience, what do salespeople do that you like that creates value for you? And a woman down the front row said, I like it the salespeople who come in to serve me rather than serve their needs. And the audience was just so, you know, so responsive. I thought, okay. So anyway, I started by interviewing about 30 serving salespeople who I knew. What do you do to serve your customers? And I had a list there, but that then life and career got in the way. And then so before I retired, I thought, well, this is what I want to do. So I interviewed about 25 to 30 former students who were buyers. I said, what do salespeople do for you that serve you that creates value for them? And so I had a whole bunch of responses. I took it back to Butler. We worked with a couple of really good researchers. We designed an electronic survey. We sent it out, got over 300 responses, and that's where the serving pillars came from. Okay, so that's where that started. So the serving pillars were not something we scratched out on a whiteboard. These are a result of research.
So say a bit about Paul and his
Yeah.
experiences with some of
So,
those
well,
pillars.
Paul,
But
well,
don't give it all away. We
don't give
want
it
them
all.
to read
Okay.
the book.
So Paul's a microcosm of a lot of the salespeople I talked to over the years. And I knew that I wanted to have a parable. I knew that I wanted to have a story. And I knew where I wanted him to begin and where he wanted to end up. I knew that. And so basically, I did then some research to go around the seven pillars. And so basically, I said, how can I craft this story so that he gets there and he may so that and it's also so that when a salesperson picks this book up, they're going to read a story, but they're also going to get some very good information that's going to help them serve their customers. And so eventually we had this ending where I wanted Paul to get to.
Excellent. And we don't have time to look at all seven, but Gabby's going to raise the screen and share what those seven
Sure.
are. I'm going to
Okay.
focus on my three favorite pillars, starting with blend, passion, and perseverance. That's pillar number two. That's for the audience, developing a passion for resolving their customers' issues and combining that passion with perseverance
Hmm.
throughout the process until an acceptable solution is achieved. So, Dan, how can sales professionals distinguish between healthy perseverance and serving a customer and simply just pushing for a sale when the customer's needs may actually point in a different direction?
Okay. Well, some of your folks may have heard the saying, the main thing, the important thing, the main thing needs to remain whatever I'm sorry, is the main thing needs to remain the main thing. The main thing is that the main thing stay the main thing.
All
Sorry, I
right.
left that out there. The main thing is that the main thing stay the main thing.
All right.
So the main thing is serving your customers. Now, what I'd like your folks to do, if you've got something to write with, I'm going to give you a little acronym to write down. Okay? So get something out, just like the teacher, and listen up because this will be on the test. All right? Okay. I want you to write in big letters. Here's 6 letters here. W I M I T I. WIMITI. What does that spell? Wimity. Well, that's an acronym for what is the most important thing to you. That's what you need to find out from your customers. That is the main thing. And the main thing is that the main thing remain the main thing.
All right.
That is what's most important to them. You need to stay focused on that, not what's important to you, not these red herrings that come up. Now, it's also important that that main thing, what's important, may change throughout
Mhm.
the course.
Love it.
And you've got to make sure if you talk to a customer and 3 weeks later, go back and talk to them again and say, well, we're going to talk, you want to make sure that, okay, last time we talked about this, is that still where you want to be? Because they may have changed. But again,
Excellent.
the main thing is that the main thing remain the main thing.
All right. Let's keep it on the main thing because the essence of staying true to the main thing is developing this relationship around trust. And that connects
Mhm.
to my fourth pillar. Gabby, if you could raise it again, growing trust through the human touch. And that's by combining technological tools with a personalized communication strategy. I'm intrigued by that, a personalized communication strategy. The serving salesperson demonstrates their competence, consistency, and dependability to build trust throughout the sales journey. What are the one or two essential behaviors, Dan, that a salesperson should practice to build a genuine trust with their customers? You just got muted, Dan. You're muted.
Well, I don't know
There
how
you
that
go.
happened. Are we back? Okay, don't know
We're
how that
back.
happened, but okay. Um, the Forrester Group does a study every now and then on trust in the business. And the number one thing, whether a company is going to do business with you, is do they trust you?
Yeah.
Do they trust you? Okay, so how does the salesperson develop trust? Now, and Forrester came up with 7 levers of trust, but there's 3 of them, and you mentioned them that are most important. Competence, consistency, and dependability. Competence, what's competence? You're the expert. You're the expert. You prepare so thoroughly that the customer knows that you're there, I'm sorry, that they understand you from the start and they feel supported all the way through. Your competence. Second thing is consistency. You're the same steady person every time. And as you know, customers can get very, very nervous. They can get very anxious about things. You never vary. I'm going to be the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. And finally, dependability. Consistent, reliable, and a values line behavior. I had a guy, a sales guy, old sales boy would come in and talk to my class. He'd make everybody stand up and say, okay, do what you say you're going to do, and when you say you're going to do it.
Simple.
And it's not rocket science, but those 3 things, competence, consistency, and dependability, that goes a long way to
A
developing
long
that
way.
trust.
Absolutely. And then there's my other favorite, which is guide the transformation. And as
Mhm.
you state in your book, by implementing the principles of the 7 pillars, the serving salesperson has gained the customer's trust to the point where they can
Mhm.
guide the customer through their own transformation. So, how does the serving salesperson equip him or herself to look for opportunities to guide the customer to a level of true transformation?
Well, the pillar number 7 is 7 by design. And basically, if you have a serving salesperson that have practiced those 6 pillars and have implemented those, the first 6, you have developed that level of trust with the salesperson. It's no longer your interactions are no longer based on selling, they're based on serving.
Mm,
You've gone from a salesperson to a consultant,
mhm,
those types of things. So to get transformation, there's 2 words: discover and collaborate.
uh-huh.
For basically what you need to do is you've hopefully elevated that customer from being mired in their problems to thinking about, oh, woe is me, to actually, what are some of the possibilities for me? But the thing with that, this key thing is, and from a brain friendly communication standpoint, you need to get them to discover that on their own. You can't say, you could do this by, well, what would be the value? You mentioned you've got this real barricade here, this real barrier. What would be the value? What would it do for you if you could get that barrier removed and move on? Now they've thought about that, and you get them to think about that. Because if they discover it on their own, then they own it. Then they own it. You've got that psychological ownership. And the next number is collaborate with them. Okay, that's a really good idea, Reggie. Now let's figure out how can we make this work together. Let's talk through this because then it becomes their own as well. So it's discovery and collaboration. Those are the 2 things can really help them move from where they are to where they want to be.
Absolutely. Discovery and collaboration. And when we think about getting this incorporated in the way organizations and companies do business, the next question has to do with how to institutionalize these wonderful practices. And so how might all HR departments within companies alter or modify their current professional development and trainings to incorporate some of these wonderful principles of the serving salesperson?
What do you mean other than going out and buying 50 copies of my book? You mean that? Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. It's just slipped out. Uh, no, basically, well, you all know it comes from the top.
Yeah.
You all know it comes from the top. And, one of the things you didn't mention, Reggie, that a group that I did some work with for many years was auctioneers,
Huh.
interestingly enough. Now, class participation was not a problem. I said, but they taught me that your walk talks and your talk talks, but your walk talks louder than your talk talks. Okay. I tried that once and they said, how did I do it? And they said, no, don't give up your day job. No, your walk talks and your talk talks, but your
Mhm,
walk talks louder than your talk talks.
mhm,
So you have to institute those things and it has to come down from on the top. Okay. And again, at the end of the day, I'll go back to, I'm a marketing guy. I'm going to go back to, it's all about the customer. It's keeping, unfortunately, in this day and age, customers are begin to thought of, eyeballs or clicks or order baskets.
Mhm.
Those are people behind that.
Right.
There are people behind that who are making those decisions. And I have said this from the day one of my teaching and will continue to do so. Ladies and gentlemen, there is no substitute for talking to your customers. In fact, there was just an article here in Harvard Business Review. It's May, June. What customers can learn from their biggest fans.
Hmm.
And it's a guy named Marcus Buckingham who's been around for a long time. But one of the things he talked about, let me get my, oops. Oh, sorry. Okay. He talked about creating extreme positive experiences. Creating extreme positive experiences. And one of the things he said, when I talk to people, the thing that customers said about when I asked them about what they like, says, "Oh, I really love it when they do this." They were talking about specifically when Publix has moved into the Cincinnati area and Kroger is trying to, and they said, "Well, I really love it when the guy carries my groceries out to the car." Or I really love it when the good guy behind the meat counter gives me a recommendation. Or I really love it when the produce guy says this. So, what do your customers love? Focus on what they love. And one last thing, we tend to focus too much on what's wrong and needs to be fixed.
Well, that's true.
Focus on what's right and build on that.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Um, I'm being nudged by about three people who are in the millennial generation. And I'm being told that I'm hogging all the time with my friend Dan. So I'm going to shift to the Q&A portion of
Okay,
the
sure.
program, and Gabby's going to jump in at this point.
All right. Thank you, Reggie, and thank you, Dan, for being here with us today. So, our first question is, which pillar do you believe is most difficult for sales professionals to genuinely embrace and why?
I haven't thought about that. Let me think. You know,
I can pull up the list
no,
too.
that's I
Yeah.
kind of remember them.
For
So,
our audience.
yeah, if you want to put, I think actually it's pillar number one
Okay.
because pillar number one is really transform. It's a mindset. It's transforming your
Mhm.
mindset. And again, as I'll say, acting differently requires thinking differently. And you have to really, I'll go back to set your internal compasses. What do people do for me that I really like? And how can I implement that in my sales approach? And how can I be focused on I talk about you make serving calls rather than sales calls.
Wow.
Think about going there with the idea to serve rather than the idea to sell. And that's so antithetical to what we're used to as a
Mhm.
salesperson. Probably if you got a sales manager pounding on you saying, I need to do this or that.
Mhm.
But if you focus on that because the set serving is your true north, that's the foundation for everything else.
Right. It's about that inward thinking before
It's the
you,
inward thinking.
yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, that's good.
Mhm.
Mhm.
All right. So many sales organizations are built around measurable outcomes such as revenue, quotas, the bottom line, the list goes on. So how can organizations incorporate a philosophy of serving without losing sight of those business realities?
Well, my friend, if I had the answer to that, I wouldn't be sitting here. So, but I think what you have to think about is what are some of the soft skills along the way that you can measure? What are
Hmm.
the soft skills in terms of, and a lot of that, you don't have, when I work with companies, you don't have to have a survey of 300 customers, 500 customers on a 1 to 5 scale to tell something. I would go out and when I'd work with a company, I'd say, give me 15 of your customers, give me a third good ones, a third middle ones, and a third not so good ones. And I would just ask them 3 questions. What do you like about this company? What do you wish they'd do different? And what could they do to serve you better? And folks, if you go out and do that, you talk to 15 of your customers, you're going to get so much good information. And then you can begin to incorporate that into those metrics that you use. Now, again, that's more difficult than, sales of a particular product. But think about the soft side and just think of it. And just the mere fact you ask your customers, that says a lot right there.
Hmm. Yeah. Ask and listen to their responses.
Yeah. And the 7 habits of highly effective people, habit number 5, listen with the intent to understand, seek first to understand, then to be understood.
Hmm. Definitely. All right. So our next question is, can the seven pillars also change the way employees within organizations serve one another? In other words, how might the principles of the serving salesperson apply to internal relationships between colleagues, departments, and leaders?
Absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, this is designed for that because basically, you know, when you think about it, folks, no matter what job you're in sales.
Mhm.
You're in sales. And you're always trying, you're trying to influence somebody else to come around to your point of view. And it's
Mhm.
absolutely, and we all know people, we all have company, we all have people in organizations who are there. You get that idea. They're there to serve other people.
Mhm.
And you think about they can be a good model for somebody else. One of the things that we talk about, blend passion, perseverance, we're talking about grit. Well, find a culture and create a culture around
Mhm.
that. Create a culture on serving others, and you absolutely can do that. And that's the principles there are very applicable to the workplace and in interpersonal relations.
Certainly. So, our next question is, what advice would you give to leadership, quote unquote, at the top that is trying to implement this serving salesperson mindset, but is
Mhm.
meeting resistance from employees?
Okay, go talk to your customers. Go
Mhm.
talk to your and send everybody out. For you, and I don't know if Marriott does this, but Marriott for many years, they would send their top people of all across. They would have to go out and work in a property for
Oh,
like
wow.
4 days.
Hmm.
And so if you ever were in a Marriott and there was some guy in a coat, an older guy or a woman in a coat and tie behind the desk who was having trouble checking you out, and the 20 something had to come in and do that for him, you know, that was it. But the thing about it is, they learned so much by doing that.
Right.
They learned so much. Like one of the things, Marriott was actually one of the first companies to come up with the express checkout
Oh,
because
wow.
by listening to their
Yeah.
customers, that was for that was for one of the hotels I'm trying to think. But anyway, basically they realized a lot of salespeople wanted to get out and they didn't want to stand in line
Hmm.
to get to. So it's just little things like that that you learn. So, and how do you do that to the employees? Well, then really, as a leadership, you know who these champions can be.
Hmm.
And you have to have champions, depending the size of your organization. But you have to have champions there who, if you get them on your side, then they can then serve as champions for the rest of them. And it's not now. It isn't going to happen overnight. You're not
Hmm.
going to wave a magic wand and say we're going to be customer focused today. But it's again beginning with a choice, beginning with that choice to serve others.
Definitely. And it's a journey. Definitely takes time.
Yeah, the journey of 1,000 miles. Hmm.
Yeah. So our next question is, these are difficult times economically that we're living in. There's polarization across the nation. So how can companies make their way in this environment without abandoning their values?
Well, first off, don't abandon those values.
Mhm.
Don't abandon those, and you have to stick to those values. Now, the thing about it is what was values in 1995 may not be values today.
Mhm.
And again, I'll go back to what are our customers telling us? What are our customers telling us? And what are the things that we need to do? And the thing that you want to do with that is you want to bring employees into that.
Mhm.
And a good thing to do is I talked about sending managers out there. Send your employees out there to talk to. And I've seen it, I've worked with a lot of, technical organizations where you had the salesperson and you'd have then the engineer behind him. I'd say, well, you talk about sales and engineer, it makes their blood run cold. But But take the engineer with you.
Mhm.
Take them with you. Take him or her with you out there. Let them talk to the customer, and then they get it. There's nothing like that. And again, if you just get a sense of what your customer you have to see how is the customer changing too. How are they changing? And you need to change. You need to change along with it because I think as Will Rogers says, if you're on the right track, if you stay there, you'll get run over. You know,
Yeah.
so
Mhm.
you've got to make sure you're changing along with the times. But again, not as I said, not setting aside the values that have gotten you there.
Certainly. Definitely. Okay, so our last question for today is I'll set the stage. We are on a college campus, and you taught for many years
Hmm.
at universities. So, what advice would you give to young people starting as freshmen or recent graduates? What advice would you give to those students going into client-facing, sales-driven environments? And particularly in a time where technology is increasingly
Hmm.
starting to really become a barrier sometimes to making meaningful connections.
Well, the pillar number 5 is grow trust through the human touch. And basically and I mean, I can't imagine, first off, I can't imagine trying to do that. Of course, I'm a little lower than most of you guys. So anyway, but the thing that you're going to have to do is you've got to weave together the technology and the personal side
Mhm.
because you're always going to have AI. You know,
Mhm.
buyers are going to, customers are generating proposals, are generating questions through AI. They're not calling their salespeople, they're generating that through AI. And
Yeah.
you got the machine-based learning of what you have, of all the things you know about the customers. You got to weave that together with what do I know about them personally.
Mhm.
And that's the thing. You can't, and we talked about how AI is going to change, and there's no question about it. People still buy from people now, albeit in a much different fashion. But one of the things that we found is the Forrester found that during the sales a call, the customer still wants to talk to their somebody in the company 5 to 7 times. But when you get that, it may be by Slack, it may be by instant messages, it may be by email. You've got to be instant and you got to be concise and you got to be accurate. But eventually, you're probably that's the human touch there. The
Mhm.
human touch may mean never talking to that person face to face, but there's still a human touch. So it's weaving together the technology and the personal touch to the best way you can to serve that customer.
Yeah, that balance, definitely.
Yes, very definitely.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Dan, for taking the time to be with us today. We had a
Well,
wonderful time
well,
talking
thank you
about
for
your new
having me.
book.
It's been delightful for me.
Mhm. Yeah.
Great fun with my friend Dan. You got to come back. All the best with
Okay.
additional conversations on this wonderful book. Everyone, please go out and get your copy, The Serving Salesperson. And Dan, thanks for reminding all of us that it really is about always remaining keenly focused on the needs of the customer.
Absolutely.
Um, Gabby's got a few announcements.
I do. So, very briefly, the Greenleaf Center is excited to announce its fifth annual Hall of Fame. This induction ceremony honors local and national leaders. So, to meet the honorees, become a sponsor, purchase an ad, or reserve your seat, you can go to greenleaf.org, where all event information is linked to the homepage. We're also running a Foundations of Servant Leadership course in October. So, this course is an experience designed for professionals to learn about the principles and fact practices of servant leadership. So, this course is set to begin in October. And for more information and registration, you can also go to greenleaf.org, where all information is linked to our homepage. If you would like to stay connected with the Greenleaf Center to learn more about our events and upcoming webinars, you can follow us on these three platforms here. And lastly, to our audience, thank you all for logging on today. If you could please take 1 to 2 minutes to complete the Zoom survey, it'll pop up after the webinar is complete. We would greatly appreciate it. So thank you again, Dan, and take care, everyone.